Alright, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Safely Extreme podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. We have another great topic for you this week. As always, I am Josh Bycer, and my co-host from Nexus Games, Sharky. How are you doing?
Better. Long story short, we got a program. So today we're going to be tackling a very controversial topic.
And something I'm sure you've been thinking about quite a lot.
Oh yeah, and forewarning to everybody, you're going to hear a lot of the word of the day today, and that is Neon Continuum. My current game.
Ethical monetization is a very big topic. It's something that's going to be discussed in my fifth book that I'm kind of in the planning stages about. But this is something that I think has really come to a head in, we could say, what do you think, like the last 4 or 5 years, kind of as we began to see free-to-play mobile games kind of into like a third generation of their design.
I mean, it's always been evolving, but usually for the worst. I'm not, as familiar with the phases of it. I realize the phases when somebody talks about them, but we want to head towards a ethical place, which is basically the opposite direction that pretty much all the AAAs are heading, which is sad.
And that is kind of one of the major points about this. When we talk about ethical monetization, most studios, or at least most of the ones that people recognize, don't really prescribe to it. This is kind of one of the bigger points about this. And yeah, to Rat's comment about premium currency and things like that, there's a lot that goes into what makes something ethical and unethical. And that's one of the challenges of this topic.
One key thing that we need to clarify is that when we're talking about ethical monetization, we're not just talking about free-to-play. We're talking about all monetization.
Yeah, that so includes microtransactions, DLC.
We're talking about gold editions, gold diamond editions, gold diamond platinum editions, diamond platinum, all those, different things.
The reason why we will probably focus a lot on free-to-play is that's kind of where monetization is at its height. What makes this very tough, and this is something I'm writing about right now, is that there is no one thing. There's no smoking gun that makes something ethical or unethical. It all comes down to how it's implemented in a game. A loot box system in one game could be ethical, while in another game it could be highly unethical.
I would disagree with that, unless you're not talking about a monetary loot box. If you're talking about a unmonetary loot box, then yeah, that could be ethical, but
I'm talking about things more from a mechanic point of view. I'm not even focusing on the monetization just yet.
Yeah.
I'm talking about at the individual system level.
Yeah, so, at the individual system, you could do it both ways. If you're charging for it, that's where things get in the question. And also, there's a big, massive difference between a loot box and, say, a card pack. While they may look the same on the surface, they are definitely not.
Or a gacha-based system as well. Again, this is where it gets difficult, because just because one developer does things unethical or one does it ethical, doesn't automatically make that design, universally good or bad. It's something that I think a lot of people tend to struggle with. Consumers who will say, oh, there's a microtransaction in your game, you're pay-to-win scum. Or a developer says, oh, so-and-so did this, well, we do the same thing, then we're perfectly fine. And that gets at kind of the heart of the idea of, personalization or cosmetics being always ethical, which they are not.
Usually they are the opposite of ethical.
If we start at kind of the high level, we have monetization in terms of new content, DLCs, special editions, gold, platinum, diamond, 47 varieties of Ubisoft games, that kind of thing. When we talk about pure content, as in, I hand you money, you hand me a 20 more hour campaign, or 5 new story vignettes, or things along those lines, if it's a direct transaction like that, that I believe, or that I feel, is on the fair side.
It depends. Ask a lawyer. Because, if you're charging $5 for a simple hat, that's not ethical. But if you're talking about a level that lasts 5 minutes for $5, also not ethical. If you're talking about something that gives players maybe not necessarily a more total content in a roguelike. They did a DLC, and that DLC added in 20 more things that provide variant. and they charge $5-10 for it, that would probably be ethical, as long as it's adding enough to it.
To Rat's Tail's comment, if they know what they're buying is really not ethical. Again, it depends. One of the challenges of kind of ethical and unethical design is how the game is being positioned around it. There are plenty of free-to-play microtransaction-based games that tend to obscure what someone is buying. You're not spending $5, you're spending 3 gems, 4 stars, 75 platinum, and you'll get this rare item. And this is one of the things that I think we're seeing more and more governments take note of, is that purchases cannot be obscured.
That is a government loophole. That's the reason why pretty much everything is in the video game industry is pretty much unregulated, is because of that loophole of the obscured currency, because basically the gambling commission and whatnot only applies to stuff that is actual currency. If it's a obscured, then the rules don't apply. So that's the reason why, to get around, to skirt a lot of these regulations, they have made up where, you're not gambling with real money, you're gambling with our currency that you bought.
And that goes back to the days of prohibition and the idea that kind of when we saw this strike against drinking and gambling, it was, you're not gambling with money, you're just playing a little toy game, and then you get a little token, and then you can trade that token in for things, like a drink. And it's what a lot of like pachinko parlors in Japan also will do as well. Yes, you're spending money and you're getting the stuff, but you're not trading that in for anything. But there just so happens to be a reward kiosk 5 feet away from the pachinko parlor. You can trade that in for real money, but you're not doing it on site. It's a completely different service. Like we said, when you're trying to gauge whether something is ethical or not, it really has to be decided as early in the game's development as possible. Because when we talk about monetization, whether it's the high level of new content or the low level microtransactions, this is something that becomes integral to your game design, your game experience. You shouldn't be waiting until your game is done to then figure, okay, should we put microtransactions in? No, you need to be thinking about this concurrently as you're designing your game.
The only monetization that makes any kind of sense to decide at the very end is just, we're going to sell it for a flat price. That's the only monetization model that makes sense to tack it on at the end.
That is considered, at least in most cases, to be ethical because it is a flat transaction. I give you $20, you give me a game, we're done, we never have to see each other ever again. One of the big things that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years has been this growth of live service, where it's not done after you spend $50, $60. There's a season pass, there's the special edition, there's new content, or as we saw with a lot of developers really trying to, double or triple dip, have microtransactions on top of a retail game. And we're not talking about microtransactions as in, a new costume or a new level. We're talking about selling, experience boosts. Oh, you need more gold for your game? Well, give us 50 cents and we'll give you 1,000 gold. How can you not like that?
A lot of developers purposely created a problem in order to sell you the solution. Yeah. That is clearly unethical.
And that goes into the concept of fun pain. The idea that you're purposely making a game worse in order to sell the solution or sell the cure for it can only be acquired with real money.
We've seen some of that in non-monetized ways too. We see that in Evil Genius 2, where you have to progress all the way up through the tech tree to get to the point where your cameras will automatically mark enemies that come into your base. That should have been a base level stuff the second you unlock the cameras. What's the point of the cameras if they don't sit there and assign stuff and you have to go and manually go every time somebody comes in there? That's a problem they created, and they sold the solution, but they sold it in-game with in-game currency. There's no microtransactions, but when you sell that through a microtransaction, it's the same thing, but it's bad monetization at that point rather than just bad design.
That is an example where you can see kind of the gears working in the background. You can see kind of behind the curtain as to why that decision was made. You can take that system and apply it to any monetized game. Like, I'm sure someone could be doing the very exact same thing, but charge 50 cents or $1. Super camera upgrade, 99 cents. Have your cameras automatically track enemies for you.
You can buy this package, get 500 identifications for $5, and then you have to keep on renewing it.
That, again, is one of the common points about this, is that for people like us and, someone like, we get Ramin on again, we see this stuff immediately. And part of the challenge about this is trying to educate people on what's good and bad. Because like I said at the start, there are people who will say, oh, if it's cosmetic, then it's automatically good. Or, oh, if it's only $1, then, what's the harm in doing it?
I wonder who started that whole thing about if it's cosmetic, it's good. Maybe it's the AAAs who have abused everybody for so long that looked in there and be like, the cosmetics is our most valuable thing, and it's the most abusive thing that we're getting over the most on, and it's making the most money. Why don't we promote that as being good? And we'll do, it's just cosmetic. It's a catchy line, just like the politic line. It's just cosmetics. Yeah. And then they drilled that into so many people's heads that vomited it back verbatim, and now it's all over the place. And it's even got developers in on it that had no intention on being bad, had intention on being good. And then they're just like, it's just cosmetic. And it's like this infection caused by the AAAs that have infected us with this, it's just cosmetics. They tried to do the surprise mechanics too, but that didn't go over well with them. But they did well with the, with the it's just cosmetics. And it's the same exact thing. There is no difference between the surprise mechanics and the it's just cosmetics. That is the exact same thing, but one of them, they got over people, and the other one got caught.
There are people who argue with me that, oh, it's fine. It's just like playing Diablo. Loot boxes are perfectly ethical. And somebody tried to play the, oh, but what about this game with me, with trying to argue that Diablo is just like a mobile game. Which, again, not counting the Diablo mobile game, which is its own quandary.
You got a phone, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Part of this problem, again, is that when you're trying to define whether or not something is ethical, you have to be able to understand what aspects make it ethical and what makes it unethical. If we talk about things from the unethical side, somebody should not feel like they need to be forced to spend money. And this is a major point that I talk about in my article and in the upcoming book, that a lot of the mobile and very monetized games will kind of force it down your throats to say, oh, you need to buy this. Oh, why haven't you bought this? You need this. Or they'll do it very covertly, and they'll just make the game very hard for you. Oh, you had progress? Well, now you're going against people that are 80 times harder than you, but you can always spend money and maybe get a powerful new weapon.
Yeah. And one thing we need to put out here, there is no game that is 100% ethical that has basically ever succeeded. So, we're not telling you to be 100% ethical. We're telling you to be a vast majority ethical, because, there are unethical stuff that if you do not do it today, you are dead as a studio. If you list your price per sale at $14.99, the fact is that price is unethical, because that is tricking the people that it's not $15 when it actually is $15. If you listed your price at $15 rather than $14.99, your sales would probably half, if not lower, because of that 1 cent. And it's a psychological trick. It's very, very minor in that fact, and it's a must do. Yeah, it is sort of an ethical gray area, but it's still bad. At this point, there is no choice. It is widespread through culture. It's ingrained in us. So, no escaping it at this point. Key word in that is probably as originally.
And part of this issue is that because everything can be exploited, it makes it very hard to kind of prove when something isn't exploited. One of the reasons why people still will trust companies like Nintendo and Valve and, the whole consumer loyalty, they can get away with a lot of their stuff by focusing on making their games are often very ethical. They're priced at a quote-unquote fair price. But, Nintendo has done some very skeevy things in the past, especially when it comes to, emulators and, mod support and kind of the fandom on that side. They get away with that because their products are very much, as straight-laced, I think, as one can be. At least until they started doing more mobile stuff. But that's another story.
And to Will's point, yeah, there's tons of streamers and YouTubers that do that. Like, I know I watch one, almost every other video, they come on and be like, hey, we just got new limited time merch. It's only available until it's sold out. Get it now. And once it's gone, it's gone. Is what they're probably doing is pre-orders. And once they're ready to cut off that faucet, they cut it off and then just never, get any more. So they just do one bulk order. They use the fear of missing out to trigger that. That's been done in games. Nintendo's done that several times recently.
Or people who expect and they say, oh, well, we haven't got any donations. You gotta donate, if you don't, something bad will happen to me, or they'll manipulate people along those lines. Bringing this back to game design, or video games in general, if you cannot convince somebody to spend money on your game ethically, then you are kind of have one foot in the unethical grave already. It can be very difficult because we've seen games that kind of skirt this line. As Shark said, there is no such thing as unethical, ethical, and never the two shall meet. It's always like different degrees.
And what we're talking about is like, Josh said you got one foot in your grave if you're not being ethical. And I would say you got one foot in the grave if you're being, less than 80% ethical, even 90% probably, you need to be mostly ethical, like again, the 99-cent thing at the end, that's unethical, but that is, just a very, very small thing that, people won't even register as being unethical, even though it is, but, you have to do that kind of thing. Now, and, as YouTubers and whatnot, we have to tell you to subscribe and lick the smash button at the end kind of thing. And, that's something we have to do. Or else,
still unethical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, but those are small things. And, it's a very, very small percentage. So, like, we're keeping, like, 99.9% ethical kind of thing, and like 0.01% unethical kind of thing. And, you need to keep that, high level of ethicalness, but you will never reach 100% unless you want to basically fail.
Mm-hmm. And the more you try to be ethical, the more challenging that you're trying to reach on that. Like we said, you need to do this early. Because once you start kind of going down this route, or you wait too long to do it, it becomes harder and harder to implement this fairly. As we saw with a lot of AAA games, that will then tack on monetizations at the very end. Or, they'll wait until the game is about release and they'll say, oh, and if you want to get extra loot or extra bonuses, give us $5.99.
Yeah. And the author's comment, it was actually Josh that started that.
Oh, it's definitely degrees of free-to-play. And the issue that we see with a lot of titles that go this route is that they may do one thing good, but they may do two or three things unethically. Mm-hmm. So, here's an example from the mobile game Azure Lane. This is a title that I think has perhaps the fairest... Oh, there we go. This is a title that has I think, one of the fairest gotcha banners in terms of giving the player currency. It's the only one that I play where you can guarantee, just through playing, get enough for a 10 roll once a week. Maybe even more than that, depending upon any special events. But then what they do, though, is that they heavily charge on any kind of custom skins for their characters. Also, don't Google those skins or you'll probably get put on a watch list for sure with that game.
Yeah.
But those skins can run anywhere from like $10 to $20, I think. I haven't really done the conversion of the currency, but that currency is like, oh, you play the game for a month, you'll get 5. Oh, and it costs like 1,000 to get a skin of a character. And many skins are, limited time only. And what they do, of course, is that's where their monetization model is focused on. And you'll see this with a lot of these games, that there has to be a central point of their monetization system. What are we banking on people spending money on? Is it custom skins? Is it quality of life, cutting down fun pain? Is it new content, new banners, new characters, stuff like that? And that's where these games will tend to prioritize. In the title Illusion Connect, their kind of primary monetization is going to be the gacha system. That almost every, I think like 2 to 3 weeks now, there's a new character banner. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 character banners. And their drop rate is, I think, 2% to get one of those characters when you're rolling the gacha. So for them, that's where they're primarily focusing on their money. But again, every game is different.
Yeah. And something I want to look back and talk about is the different what was I going to say? I hate when I lose it. Let's go on.
Okay. Let's see. Yep, and to Will's comment, once somebody starts to see the issues going on behind the scenes, it colors their entire thoughts on that game. Oh, I'm having trouble here. Well, it must be because of a pay-to-win option. And this is why, as we said, once you start going down this road, it's very hard to course correct.
Right. And then I want to go back to talk about the obscured monetization. Basically, that is one of the things that is basically always unethical. It's only there to skirt loopholes in the law. But here's the thing. If you do not research a law and you do not know exactly what's legal and illegal, if you get rid of that paid currency and you just straight off come in with currency, you might be in for a world of hurt. You are likely to be in for a world of hurt, because the fact is most things done in a free play game kind of thing are illegal if you don't have that buffer paid currency in between. And because all those things are a lot of those things are very, very, very unethical. So unethical they're against the law, which would be loot boxes. Your normal loot boxes. And maybe we should talk about the difference between a loot box and a card pack, and maybe gacha. Even gacha's kind of in the center of those two.
Yeah, so when we talk about loot boxes, the issues with them is that you're spending money on a completely unknown commodity. It can be, and this is why people like them, or why developers like them, it is the most akin to a slot machine. I pull the lever, I could get something that's worth $5,000, I could get something that's worth 3 cents. And what they do is that there is no kind of control or manipulation to kind of help the consumer. It is just basically a money drain.
There may be a control or thing in there to go against the consumer. Like a rigged casino machine. Because there are plenty of games out there that have basically a rigged casino in their thing. And, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure Raid Shadow Legends have that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, pretty sure Hearthstone has that. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other AAAs that have that. Not a whole lot of them, but probably.
And this is another very big point. A lot of these systems are never told to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And that is 5,000% unethical. And I think is that illegal in some places?
I don't think I think a lot of people do have laws against that. But I know they have laws about it when it's not being obscured by the currency. Mm-hmm. But I'm unsure if they have laws about it when it's not obscured by the currency. That currency really obscures a lot of stuff,
Yeah. And I think this will be something that will become part of the growing discussions. You see, for those of you who forget, before the world got shut off in 2020, there was a lot of discussions about having laws regarding monetization and loot boxes. Not just in the United States, but all around the world. And now that things are starting to reopen, I'm sure some of these discussions are going to start coming back.
Yeah. And, the whole core behind a loot box is there is no set value. Mm-hmm. Meaning that it is gambling.
Yep. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier, that part of the reasons why the game industry has gotten away with this for so long has been the very fact that we're not, quote unquote, dealing with real money. You're not spending money on, skins or music or a new character. You're spending gems and stars and, platinum and unobtainium and free to play.
Yeah, and you're just doing simulated gambling inside with those currencies that you paid real money for.
And don't forget this point. You can't take that money out. Because that's another point about gambling. Is that part of it is that, yes, I'm gambling, I'm getting chips and, currency points or whatever, but then I can trade that in for real money. And that's when we get into the whole gambling commission.
Mm-hmm.
But with video games, outside of very specific examples like EVE Online and Second Life, I'm sure there are a few others, they don't allow for currency exchange.
Yeah. So, in other words, it's worse than the worst casino that you've ever been to. Mm-hmm. Because, like you think about it, it's number one, a casino first. And then, they can put systems in there to, rig the machines to not pay out, aka a rigged casino machine. Mm-hmm. And then when they pay out, you get the tokens and everything, and they're like, yeah, we aren't cashing you out. We're not going to give you cash for that. So it's a rigged casino that you can't even cash out of. So everything you put in there, every cent that you go into a casino in with, you do not leave without it. With it, rather. So, you're better off going to a casino and playing in there because you can cash out, and maybe, there's a lot of laws and a lot of monitoring that maybe you won't actually get scammed by a rigged machine there. Yeah. But they're like triple getting you there. Mm-hmm. Most of the things.
And to Algodo's point, that was another major thing that happened kind of around the rise of the MMO genre. The idea of having black market, gold farmers, being a very lucrative field. It got so lucrative that Blizzard just decided, let's just sell gold in our game now.
Yeah. Doesn't cost us anything, and we can make a shit ton of money off of it.
Mm-hmm. And they fought against that for years, too. Was that like right around the time that they got bought by Activision?
I don't know.
They were spreading a rumor right there.
but there's, let's go to the other extreme, the card packs. Now, when I say card packs, I don't necessarily mean, things you buy in CCGs. Because, you probably will buy them in a CCG, but not all CCGs have card packs kind of thing. Like, let's look at Hearthstone, for example. They don't have card packs. They have loot boxes. But when you have, when you look at, like, say, Magic the Gathering, they have card packs. Now then, what really defines a card pack to be different than a loot box is inside of a card pack, and this goes for physical Magic the Gathering as well as, the video game of Magic the Gathering, the online ones. Well, no, they're not the OG loot boxes. They're not loot boxes at all. They're card packs. They're very, very different. Very, very different. They have similarities. But, I mean, a game that you're selling for $19.99 has similarities with a game that's selling for $59.99, has a gold edition for, $79.99, has a platinum edition for $89.99, has a super gold for $200, has a super platinum for $5,000, and it goes on and on. Those two are similar, but they are very, very, very different. There's an ethicalness in the difference kind of thing. And it's a pretty major one. So here's the difference. See, in a loot box, when you buy a loot box, you get a random thing of a random value. There is nothing set. And that is something the Gambling Commission will absolutely eat your soul for. Where, the physical Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all these other card games, all those have to go to the Gambling Commission because they're exchanging for real money. They don't have that they don't have the paid currency to obfuscate the transaction. So, what happens is when you buy a pack of cards, a card pack, what happens is you get set values. When it, it's listed on the pack somewhere that you are going to get, let's say, 10, let's say 7 commons, 3 uncommons. You're going to get 1 rare, and you're going to get 1 full card of any rarity, and it has this much of a percentage chance of being an extra rare kind of thing. And when it's done that way, when a consumer goes in to buys it, they have a set value that they're going to get. They know that the set value is 7 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare, and 1 foil of various rarities. And because a full oil is a rarity, it's a rarity above rarities kind of thing. So like that is a set value. So that whenever you buy the thing, it's not about ratios. It's about set values, not ratios. Ratios and set values are different, very different. Because the value of the item is very, very relevant. Because the Gambling Commission says that if you do not, I forget how they phrase it, but basically they say consumers have to be buying something of a set value because otherwise you're getting ripped off potentially. If it does not have a set value, then go to the Gambling Commission. Because the Gambling Commission is what's telling you this. And the Gambling Commission says that things have to have a set value and consumers have to know what value they're getting. It's just like back in the old day when you go to a gumball machine. You remember those? When you go to the gumball machine, they will have like 20 different colors of gumballs in that machine. And you will put a quarter in there and you will turn it and not know which gumball you're going to get. but there is a set value. It's a set value of a gumball.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if it's going to be a red gumball. You don't know if it's going to be a green gumball. You don't know if it's going to be a white one. But there is a set value of a gumball. Now, if they had put stuff in there, like you can go in there and, you know, get a little capsule that has air in it, then you're not getting a set value, and that would be illegal to the Gambling Commission.
And that's another point about loot boxes, or the kind of ideal loot box, is that you can spend money and get negative value.
Mm-hmm.
If you get something that you cannot use at all, or it's so minimum in its use that it's not even worth, it's not even worth it to try and mill it or sell it, that is very unethical. It's one of the things that we've talked about with the discussion over whether or not to have a fixed limit on how much somebody can spend. And that kind of is, I think, a good segue into gacha-based systems or banners along those lines.
Before we get into that, I want to address what Brett's talked about. Cards do have a set value, because the set value is based off of how many are produced and the rarity of them. So when you produce them at an even amount, then all rare, are the same value. Now then, there's a secondary value that gets applied after that, and that is called consumer value. And that is based off of supply and demand, and that is not something based off of the game. That is something based off of what consumers do. If consumers say they do not like this rare and they do not want it, they are not willing to buy more of it, and they just want to get rid of it, then to them, that rare has less value. And if everybody wants this one rare, and like they all want to buy all of it and nobody wants to sell it, then they're like, okay, that is a super valuable rare. So they will, be willing to get rid of that one rare for free or like 1 cent kind of thing, and they'll be wanting to get that other one for like hundreds of maybe even thousands of dollars kind of thing. And they wouldn't be willing to sell it for any less kind of thing. Or, and that, well, the secondary market has nothing to do with the game itself. That is something that comes with all items. You buy a car, you buy a brand new car for $30,000. You try to sell it, and you're only going to get half the price. Because of the secondary market. The person who is making the product has no control over the secondary market. That is not a concern for game development or for anything else, as long as you're creating ethically viable stuff to begin with. And, there are Ferraris that get sold for, $1 million, and, at 3 days later, those Ferraris are, being resold by scalpers, basically, for millions and millions of dollars, like 10 million. There are graphic cards out there that are being sold for $500 right now that people, get bots and they go get them, and then they sell them on the secondary market for $2,000. Now, is that NVIDIA's fault? Probably not. Is it AMD's fault? Probably not.
But we are getting off track, and we are trying to keep this under our
point is that the secondary market, that value is not a value that is anything to do with selling the product, as long as you're selling the product ethically.
Mm-hmm. And to talk about how all things aren't created equal or trying to get that value, that takes us into kind of the idea of a banner system. And banners are a little, depending upon how they're implemented, can be fairer than a loot box. What they do is they say that if you give us money for this banner, we guarantee that you are going to get a character. Now, what that character is besides the point just yet. But if this was done in a loot box, it would basically be, okay, we're going to put everything from plus 5, pennies to ultra rare character, and everything's going to be put into this loot box, and there is no consistency. There is no kind of standard. Like we said earlier with the gumball machine. You put 25 cents in, you are guaranteed a gumball. Do you know exactly what gumball you're going to get? No. But you are guaranteed a product.
Of a set value.
Mm-hmm. Now, what they do with the gachas, of course, is as you keep putting money in, or as you keep going up, you're going to have a greater chance of getting those lower drop characters simply by doing 10 pools. And what they'll do to incentivize that more is say that, if you do a 10 pool, you are guaranteed a 2-star character. And a lot of these games are just kind of built on you always pulling in 10 pools because of it. Now, here's the question about this. And this is where, again, we get this idea of like shades of ethical free-to-play. The games that have stupidly low drop rate, I'm talking less than 1% to get an ultra rare, a 5-star, a 6-star, or anything along those lines. Given like this kind of system as we're talking about, do you think low drop rates are parts of ethical or unethical design? Like, do you think there is a good example of having a very low drop rate? Something like Genshin Impact, for instance.
I mean, if they do it in an ethical way, like a CCG would, by dividing it up into rarities and then keeping the rarities as the same, but then guaranteeing the rarities at in ways,
Mm-hmm.
And to Rastel's point, you can't really plan for the secondary market. That's basically telling, like, planning for a secondary market is like planning for the success of your Kickstarter before you've started making the Kickstarter. That can't happen. You cannot fathom what is not even remotely there.
And this is why I think a lot of TCG developers have really embraced CCG games, because when you're doing something digitally, there is no secondary market because there's no ability to trade that good.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, of course, you build it directly in the system like what you're doing in Neon Continuum.
Yeah.
But for most CCGs, when I get that card, that is locked to my account. I can't just say, okay, I'm going to take this card, buy it for me for $10, and, we go from there.
Yeah. Hearthstone has a similar system, but it's very different at the same time, to where you can take your cards and you're selling them, but you're selling them for these different currencies.
That's the milling.
And by scrapping them, quote unquote, mm-hmm. And then you get those different currencies, and then you buy cards with those different currencies. So, I mean, you are doing that technically in Hearthstone too, but, it's phrased differently, whether it is being obfuscated by more currencies kind of thing. And when in Neon Continuum, when I do it in there, I'm not obfuscating it because I'm taking it, when you sell it, it turns back into the free currency. When you'll buy something from there, you buy it with free currency. Yeah. And you earn free currency in game, as well as you can buy more of it,
Mm-hmm. And to Rat's Tail's comment, that's another really important point, because it really is going to depend on how your economy is set up for this. Like I said earlier, like something that has a 10-pool system can be considered fair, but how easy is it for somebody to be able to make use of this? With a game like Illusion Connect, for instance, or like I said with Azure Lane, just by playing the game, I can guarantee a 10 pool very easily. Now, are the drop rates really high in that? Hell no. But as a free player, I can at least participate in that. Now, conversely, you have something like Princess Connect and I think it was Arknight, that in those games, getting enough resources for a 10 pool is like pulling teeth. It is very hard, outside of course spending money, to be able to do that. And again, this goes back to what we said at the start, that these systems aren't binary. They're not immediately good or immediately evil. It's how everything is built into them and how they're balanced that determines where they fall on the scale.
Yeah, which all that goes into a completely different topic about economics and not ethical.
Yeah. But they do kind of interconnect in this aspect.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the developer needs to be making money. This is something that we've said time and time again. A completely free-to-play game that needs no monetization, that you never have to spend 1 cent on, is probably going to be a dead game within a month, maybe less than that.
Mm-hmm. Because there will never be any updates.
Mm-hmm.
At least as long as the developer isn't working for free.
Mm-hmm. Well, what should we use then? Should we say... I don't know. Do we say fair and unfair? What do you think, Shark?
I don't know. It is all ethics, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there are many ways to think about it.
Mm-hmm. And what you need to, I think ultimately one of the things you need to figure out, and I think this kind of will set the stage for like kind of moving into the back part, or kind of the conclusion for discussion for today. How fair is your game to a free player? As in, as somebody who either doesn't spend any money or maybe spends very light. We're talking about the whole fish analogy from free-to-play games. Can a guppy compete with a whale? And for a lot of games, no, you can't do that. And
not unless you're just a master level player.
I would argue no.
And even then, you're not going to be at the top. You can be, if you're a master level player and they're just whaling, and they're okay or decent, you can get up there next to them, near them, but you can't top them, kind of thing, because they can outspin whatever strategy you can make.
Yeah, with another one I'm playing, Princess Connect, I can build the best damn team, the most perfectly composition, everything is synergized and perfectly. But if somebody else has a team of 5-star, fully ranked characters, I am going to get demolished like nobody's business. And
I have to disagree with that, because I don't believe you can build that team because you failed to get Gouda. But yeah, if somebody has something clearly better and stronger than yours, then yeah, you stand no chance.
Yeah, and again, there are so many subtleties to this that we could spend. We get Ramin, and we'll be here for another 10 hours. Between the three of us, coming up with these examples.
Yeah, one thing I want to tackle though is why should you do one monetization over another?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at free to play. Why would you be free to play? Well, you would be free to play because it is a multiplayer game that you need to get player, and it's a multiplayer only game because you need to get a lot of people in to have the game work. Mm-hmm. And in a case like that, you need it to be free to play because you're an unknown developer, so nobody knows you, nobody knows your game. You put a price tag on it, and far less people are going to want to take a shot on that. And you don't have a massive marketing budget, and then when you go to sell it, kind of thing, you get, maybe, let's say you sell 100 copies in the first, week, kind of thing. Well, those 100 copies will be refunded before that week will be over because they're not able to matchmake with anybody. So they don't even get to play the game they just bought. So that is like a no-go. So free to play will be like, it gets rid of that barrier of entry of $15 or whatever price tag you were going to sell it for. And it makes it where anybody who wants to play it can just click a download button, download it, and get right into it. And that will open you up to far, far higher player numbers, which will then allow you to get, hopefully, enough players to actually matchmake, which then will allow you to actually play. Now, if you're doing a single-player experience, you don't want to do free-to-play. You do not want to do free-to-play. And maybe not all multiplayer things do you want to do free-to-play. But you know, that is a specific example of, like, my case with Neon Continuum of why I wanted to do free-to-play. Well, I didn't want to do free-to-play, but it was a must-do in order for the game to have any inkling of success. And that is something you have to figure out while you're developing the game to why you're going with that model. Don't just go with free-to-play because you're going to go with free-to-play. Don't go just with paid because you're going to go with paid. Have a reason behind it, a direction. That's the reason why it can't be just tacked on at the end.
Yep, just what I was about to say. And to Rat's comment about premium currency, again, would fall more in the economy of these kinds of games. I think that would be kind of off topic.
As well as the unethical, too.
Yeah. And it depends. Again, if somebody can earn premium currency, I mean earn it at a decent rate, then I would say it's on the okay side. Again, games like Illusion Connect, Azure Lane, and so on, they do allow you to earn premium currency very readily. But again, how much do you actually spend on that? For instance, if I earn 500 rupees a week, but it costs me 2,000 rupees to do a 10 pull, well, that's a bit of a problem.
I would say in general it's unethical because here's the thing, is you don't have to have that special currency. You can just have a regular currency and have everything happen the same exact way. You know, that's the way I'm doing in Neon Continuum. You know, it's not like, you know, like there's a free currency of gold or whatever we call it. And then there's the, you know, paid currency of diamonds or whatever that we don't have kind of thing. And, you know, if a player's going to be able to earn it, just let them earn it kind of thing. You know, and, you know, that's the way we have it in Neon Continuum where you earn the free currency kind of thing, but you can also buy more of it. You know, there's not a reason to separate purchases if you're going to also allow them to earn it. You know, just let them earn it and purchases and just have one in-game currency. No obfuscating. You know, it's when obfuscation comes in when trouble really begins.
Yeah.
I think I just rhymed there, didn't I?
Yeah. And when you're trying to make these systems fair for people, again, it really has to be built on what do you expect somebody to reasonably be able to play your game with? And specifically play it at a free level, because the free level is going to be your baseline. If I can play your game and compete without spending 1 cent, and I can do it in a relatively, you know, brisk period, that is on the good side. But a lot of these games will tend to either delay that, or they'll start that downward scale, or that downward spiral. You know, it's like, okay, I can do really well, but as I start to level up, it becomes harder. And now I'm being matched with higher level people. And now everyone has the best characters, and I don't. And what is somebody supposed to do? Now, again, people will argue that, and I guess here's a point, and I think this may be one of my final ones, so I want to ask you this, as well as the audience watching. Do you think that it's fair in a free-to-play game to kind of, I don't want to say demand, but put in place that somebody should eventually have to spend money on this game. As in, well, if you're going to play this for 40 hours, I expect, you should at least be able to spend, $30 at some point just to get these advantages, to compete.
No, that is unethical.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact is you have to realize that part of your consumer base are people that either have no money because they're, 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, or whatever. And some of them are, people who live in foreign countries where their currency conversions to ours is basically, do you have $1 million? No. Well, if you did, you could exchange that for $1 and you could buy this 99-cent, microtransaction, It's like, I'm not rich. I'm not one of the, top 5 richest people in my country kind of thing. So I can't afford a dollar microtransaction inside of a game, And that's a bit of extreme, but, I'm just doing that to get a point across that, there are countries out there that the conversion rates, they can never, ever afford something. So if you're requiring it kind of thing, then your game isn't free to play. Yeah. Your game is free to start, not free to play. As a free to play model, they should be able to play the entire thing. Thing. Without paying anything. For free. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they have to have access to all the content, but they have to be able to play the entire thing,
Yeah. Now, again, though, that gets into the issue when we start talking about additional content and support. How important is it for you to get that new expansion or, that new booster pack? And this is, again, where it gets very tricky. Because, as we know, with a CCG or any kind of deck building system, new cards means new tactics. It means a new meta. It's akin to... Now, not even in this case. I was going to use, somebody buying more, better equipment to play, tennis or golf. But no, that's not the same case. Because the equipment is only there to supplement your skill. This is what we talk about when it's very fair. That if me, or if I, as a free player, good enough, I can use your free guns, your free car, your free whatever, and still win, that's great. But if it becomes a case where, you didn't buy the platinum golf club that lets you hit 2,000 extra yards, and now every course now has an additional 2,000 yards to hit, you can't compete at that level.
Yeah, that's the reason why in my game, Neon Continuum, I have focused on the cards being about strategy and not about how many you own or whatnot. Now, of course, the more that you do own, the more strategy potentials that open up to you kind of thing. But if you have all the strategy potentials, aka you have all the cards kind of thing, and you're not good at strategy, you're not going to do well. Matter of fact, you may do worse than when you had limited strategies because there was a starter deck or whatever that was already better than what you built kind of thing with all the cards kind of thing. And, the thing is, it was strategy first and then, it's you get more strategy, you get more cards and everything free over time. And that opens up more strategy to you, or you can, and you can pay money on top of that to get even more unlocked,
Yeah.
But
again, it's very hard to get that through and keep at that level for a lot of these games. Because, as we said earlier, the consumer value, I know there's been talks and studies about this, the consumer expectations or the consumer's thoughts on the value of something can be vastly different than what you as a developer thought. You may think that something is really great or not so great, but when your expert players dig into it, they can figure things out that you may not have realized.
Yeah, that's the secondary market.
Yeah. And then that secondary market can come back to hurt your primary market. Yeah. Because if all your top players say that card A is the best card in the game, don't get anything else, guess what? People aren't going to be buying anything if it's not for that one card.
And that could be a common card.
Character in a banner.
Yeah, and I've seen Magic the Gathering cards that go like that are common.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that you cannot, like I said before, you cannot plan for the secondary market. Because if you could,
Magic have to factor it in. It has to be part of your thought process.
Yeah. And, part of the thing that you need to, try to do is not have bloat what's the word for it when your stats keep on getting higher?
Scaling?
Yes, scaling bloat. You want to avoid scaling bloat to the most ability you have. And that comes down to your ability to design the game, your ability to continue to design the game, and the initial design itself. Because depending on how you design the initial kind of thing, you may have to have designer, you may have to have power creep, because of the way you did the initial design. But you want to try to do an initial design that does not have power creep. And that's the reason why in my game, we have essentially a rock, paper, scissors, system to where our numbers are, now and always will be 1 through 9.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have three different colors for them, blue, red, and yellow. And yellow is less than, blue is greater than, and yellow is equal to. So that no matter what way you combo these stats kind of thing, there are always 9 numbers that will beat every card because there is always 1 that's equal and 8 that are higher or lower. And there will never be any power creep there forever because it is designed in that way kind of thing. Now then, a 9 blue that's greater than can beat 8 cards, where a 1 blue can beat 0, but that's going to just be a power difference, not power creep.
Yeah.
And it's going to be that way throughout the entire game, no matter how far we get in. Mm-hmm. But, when you have power creep, then you're instantly making the next set better. And at that point, that is saying that if the players do not instantly buy those cards when they first come out, then they're instantly outgunned.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is why these systems have to be thought about as early in your development as possible. Because you need, and I think this is another big point, and again, where I think we should probably wrap things up. We're going to try to keep things on some of a fixed schedule here. That you need to future-proof your design in this aspect. You need to be thinking about how is somebody going to be playing my game 6 months, a year, 3 years down the line. And part of the issue that we see for games that aren't as ethical or aren't as fair is that it becomes harder and harder to compete. Because every new card, every new character, every new feature that you add in is another source of monetization for you, and it's another source of problems and unfairness for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't plan ahead like this, it's very easy for developers just to get stuck in this rut. And I see this with a lot of mobile games, where all the content that they develop is just, forced through their monetization model. Nothing is really added in terms of quality of life, in terms of new stuff for free players. It's just all about the banner, all about the microtransactions. And for the people who are paying, they're going to keep paying. For everyone else, they're going to get frustrated and stop. And my final
people that are paying will no longer have anybody to play with, and they'll quit. That's the thing about a multiplayer game. If you have a multiplayer game and there's nobody to play against, then they quit.
Yeah. Like in Marvel Strike Force, one of the systems that I despised about this game is that when they introduce a new set of characters, it is literally not possible for a free player to get those characters. Because what they do is that they set certain characters up that you need other characters unlocked and you reach a certain rank to get them. And in the span of time between when you can start getting them and when they're released, it is literally not possible for somebody playing the game for free to get them. And that is just pay to win right then and there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And again, we can certainly go around circles, and I'm sure there are more parts about this that we can discuss. If anyone has suggestions for another topic or a part 2 for this, let us know in the comments below. But again, if we're trying to keep this under a fair amount of time, I can rant for another 45 minutes to an hour easily. But I think I'll stop here. So what are your final thoughts, Shark?
Ethical and, is, I mean, it's both clear and unclear at the same time. It's safely extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And, you need to do your best to, figure out things. And, I mean, you need to, see what you can see for the second market. But you can't really plan for the second market. You can prepare. You cannot plan, You can set out the dishes and plates out the dinner kind of thing, but you cannot determine whether, Genghis Khan shows up or somebody normal shows up. That is...
Or Shark.
Yeah. You can't control who shows up and what they'll do when they get there. All you can do is set the plates and the dinnerware, And what happens after that is up to the people, So all you can do second market wise is prepare. Can't actually plan it.
Yep. And again, as I said, for developers watching this right now who are struggling with this idea of what to do with their game, just again, think about what it's like to play your game without spending any money. Mm-hmm. Is it easy to do it? Can somebody play your game for free and compete and make progress at relative relative pace? Is it annoying to play your game? Is it frustrating? Does somebody feel like they're being forced to spend money in your game? If the answer is yes to that, then you need to take a hard look at your design, your monetization. And as I've said, what we've spent almost 90 minutes talking about is this idea that if I can play your game, yeah, the more availability in your game, or the more that I can experience your game without spending money, is going to ultimately make the game better. But at the end of the day, there still needs to be money coming in. Mm-hmm. If there isn't money coming in, then it basically comes down to this. At the end of the day, somebody is going to be in trouble. Is it going to be the consumer who's spending a lot of money on your game, or is it going to be the developer who's not earning enough money and it's going to go under? Yeah. And what you need to do is you have to balance this. And balancing requires looking at all aspects of your game, from how somebody plays it to what the monetization options are available. As I said earlier, if you want to have a 0.00005% chance to get a 5-star character, but people can pull, 100 times a week, that may be considered very fair for you. If you have a 80% chance to pull a 5-star character, but it takes 6 months of grinding to get those resources, that is probably not going to work for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it depends, I think, is what we're trying to get
at. A lawyer.
But seriously, you're going to probably need to ask a lawyer, especially if you start doing currency exchanges.
Yeah.
And probably a few government bodies as well with that.
Yeah.
But let us wrap things up here, because again, this is a topic that can certainly get very wordy. So, as always, thank you so much for watching this, whether you're enjoying it live or recorded. If you want to follow us, you'll find links to all of our stuff in our respective descriptions. And if you want to talk to us on Twitter, I am on there as GW Bycer.
And I'm on there as Nexus Games INC1. And you'll find links to both of our Twitters, both of our Discords, as well as both of our YouTube channels, because you're on one of them, but you're not on the other. You know, go subscribe to both, click the smash button on both, and, you know, ring the bell so that you can actually find out when there's a, you know, or maybe fin out when there's a, you know, a stream live.
Yep.
In my case, you know, but like what else are we missing?
The Discord.
We Discords are in the description.
Your dev streams.
Oh yeah, we have dev streams on every Friday, and on my channel and on Josh's channel, you have what?
Nightly streams, developer interviews. And if you're interested in my books on design, you'll find links to them in the descriptions of every video and stream.
Mm-hmm. But with that, I think we're done.
Yeah. So we will be back next Sunday around 4:30 for our next show. And if you'd like to catch our indie game review show, that's Thursdays, starting at 3:30 on ET on our respective channels.
And we're always looking for developers to submit their games to come so we can check them out for that show.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that said, thank you everybody for watching. Tune in next time for another discussion on game design and game development here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and take care.
See ya.